Hello, hello. Oh, you on here, Chloe, watching your mama? Hey, Chloe. All right. Hey, Instagram and hey, Facebook. Uh, Hello. Happy Sunday to you guys. Wanted to hop on today because I just did a coaching session, and one of the students on my coaching session asked me, how do you keep a level head in the midst of all the chaos that is going on right now? Okay. Um, and so we talked about it on our coaching session this morning, and I felt the need to come and shoot a video about it. Now, of course, this is just from my perspective. This is just from my point of view. And it's something that I personally had to do to manage my emotions and manage my frustration and my anger and just how to deal with it. So I'll just kind of share, a couple of days ago when this whole thing first happened to our brother, right? I was enraged like the rest of us. And not only was I emotionally enraged, but I was spiritually bereaved. I was just in mourning. I just couldn't do anything. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. I just wanted to lay in the bed. And that happened for about 2 days. I did have to work and get some things done, but my spirit was so grieved. My spirit was just heavily grieved. I don't know any other way to say it other than, hey guys, being spiritually grieved. Okay. And when I started feeling this spiritual grieving, I didn't really understand what it was. So it happened for about a day. And then yesterday hit and I felt the same way. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to do anything. And I just wanted to shut off all day. And I was like, I cannot lay in this bed all day. There are things that I just have to get done. And so I realized I needed to detach myself from social media and I needed to detach myself from the news. Okay. So I ended up doing that and went out for the day just to give myself a mental break. But I found myself on the defense everywhere we went. I found myself thinking about, what if something happens to us as a family and they pull us over? What if they pull my husband out the car? What if my kids witness something that can be devastating? I mean, it was just all these things. My kids were afraid. Every time we saw a police car, my kids was like, oh my God, Mom, I'm just so scared now that I see a police car, right? Because we had to have a lot of conversations. My kids, unfortunately, are exposed to this life and they're exposed to this world. And we have to have these discussions about who the cops are. Are they really here to protect us? At the end of the day, we never know. You don't know how the scenario is going to play out. You have good cops, you have bad cops. But unfortunately, being Black in America is almost like, I don't want to say the word, but it's like a timeline of when you're going to have an encounter. Okay. And so we were having these discussions and it really depressed my spirit. It really had me very devastated. And so I had to pray about it. And then I didn't even know if I wanted to pray. I was like, God, I really don't know at this point if this is about prayer. I don't know if this is about, if it's about faith as much as it is about getting back and rebelling, right? But of course, I had to have a level head and I just retreated. And God gave me a lot of wisdom to pull from and a lot of things that I can be able to see spiritually that is protecting my physical, emotional unraveling. Okay. So I want to talk to you guys a little bit about some of the things that I wrote down 5 ways to press through the emotional suppression of what we're dealing with, and how to stay focused and how to press through to actually get beyond the sorrow, right, of what we're facing, not to push it to the side, not to ignore it, not to act like it doesn't exist, but learning how to cope through what we're dealing with. And the truth is we all tired of coping, but there's more at play here. So let me just kind of go through the 5 things that, God kind of revealed to me. One of the first things that God revealed to me is that give yourself permission to mourn. Okay. Give yourself permission to mourn. This is really, it's almost like we're in the 1950s and 60s all over again. we are really facing some very challenging bigotry and hatred. I don't know any other way to put it, but racial tension is real. Been real. It's been a part of our life, all of our life, but now it's on camera and it's very in your face, and it's being led by people in positions of leadership, right? So we have to confront that and understand that it is very much a part of our everyday life, and give ourselves permission to mourn what we're seeing, what we're witnessing, and what we're experiencing. And I wrote down the 5 stages of grief, right? Because I didn't know what I was feeling 48 hours ago, but I realized I was mourning. Okay, it's like I literally lost the death of a loved one, faced the death of a loved one, and I had to go through these stages of grief. The 5 stages of grief is denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, right? So I feel like in the past 48 hours, I went through these stages, right? Of denying what was happening at first, like, no way, there's no way, to rage, being extremely upset, to bargaining, wanting to begin to say, kind of the what if stage, to just try to have a temporary escape from the pain. And then the depression of really dealing with what's happening and accepting, like, yo, this is really happening, right? To the acceptance of this is our new reality. This is our current reality. So I went through those 5 stages of grief, and it's okay. We got to give ourselves permission to mourn. But I will say, in order to mourn properly, here's number 2. You got to unplug to process and detach to detox. Okay. When you find your spirit getting grieved and overwhelmed with what you see, the best thing to do is to stop feeding that emotion and cut everything and everybody off. From a standpoint of, if you find yourself in conversations where people are like, oh my God, did you see what's happening? Cut them off. Because here's the thing, stuff is going to happen in the world. It doesn't mean we need to know about everything that's happening, because emotionally, we can only process so much before it creates anxiety and overwhelm. And our physical bodies want to try to process what we're seeing, and we want to try to resolve what we see. And if you don't give yourself a cutoff point, you'll end up internalizing all of this, and it can literally make you sick. So you have to make sure that you are unplugging to process what is happening and detach to detox. So I literally had to cut off social media, and I had to cut off the news, right? I just had to cut everything off and just get out the house. I didn't want no phone calls with nobody telling me what's going on. I didn't want to talk to nobody about what was going on. I just needed to detach. And it really did help me. It allowed me to protect my energy, and it allowed me to protect my emotions. And it doesn't mean you're ignoring it, but what you have to do is make sure that you take care of your mental state before you unravel, and that emotion comes across in an unwanted outcome. All right. Which we're seeing everywhere. Right. So I personally had to say, Nicole, cut it off and let's address this in a different way. And so for me, it was praying, and it wasn't even prayer. It was just like, God, what's up? Like, come on, Lord. Like, I believe in you. I trust you. I believe in your word, but what we going to do about all of this? Like, come on, because we want to operate from a level of wisdom and not from emotional meltdown. And I'm going to need you to help me to process what I'm seeing, what we're encountering, and how this is going to play out. So number 2 was unplug to process and detach to detox. Number 3 was knowing that we are facing spiritual warfare. Okay. This is where the transformation started happening for me to calm down physically and begin to understand through spiritual discernment what I see. And so this is kind of where I want to sit for a minute, because I had this conversation with these young ladies this morning, and I had to help them to understand this. We're in some serious spiritual warfare. And at the end of the day, there are 2 forces at work. Most people, a lot of people do believe this. A lot of people don't. Whether you do or you don't, it's not my role to convince you. I'm just bringing forth a level of awareness, because you have a living example of what this looks like right now. Okay. Those 2 forces are good and evil. Okay. Good and evil. Now, there are a ton of scriptures that I can go through, but I want to read this one. 1 Peter 5:8-9. It says, be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, looking for someone to devour. Resist him, standing firm in the faith, because you know that the family of believers throughout the world is undergoing the same kind of sufferings. Okay. And here's the thing. There's another scripture that goes in 2 Corinthians 10:4-5. It says the weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against itself in the knowledge of God. But here's the thing. There's another version of the scripture that says the weapon of our warfare is not physical. It's not carnal, but it's spiritual, to the mighty of God of pulling down strongholds. This is spiritual warfare, y'all. This is intense spiritual warfare. And if I don't really want to get into where you are in I'm not talking about religion right now. I'm talking about understanding how the operation of good and evil works. And one of the things that God revealed to me a long time ago about racial matters, right? About dealing with racism, dealing with oppression of people and all of those things, is that one of the greatest tricks and schemes of the enemy is to attack a nation of people that personalize experiences to the point where it really creates emotional suppression. So racism is a very big, wicked scheme of the enemy. I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm just saying it's an easy target for the enemy to use to really go after a nation of people. And that is what's happening right now, is a lot of demonic forces are at play with the spiritual warfare that we're dealing with. And it's attacking, it is very blatantly attacking us blacks as a race, right? But a lot of the people, all the stuff you see is wicked schemes of the enemy. It is demonic for a man to have the confidence to be on camera in front of the world with his knee on a man's neck, knowing, and here's what's funny, is that someone in the crowd noticed it as like a karate. I don't know what kind of move it is, but it's like a karate move. It's something that you learn when you're in martial arts or some form of something. And he said, you know what you're doing. You're doing that to him because you know that it's going to suffocate him. It's called asphyxiation. One of the nurses told me that, where you automatically know it's going to paralyze to cut off the ability for the person to breathe, and you know it's going to kill them. So it was a very intentional act. And only demons, demonic, satanic, evil, wickedness can be okay with doing something like that with all the witnesses that they have. And the reality is there's a lot of demonic forces at play behind all of this. This is true spiritual warfare. I want you guys to even think about the calculativeness of everything that's happening right now. So here we just left this quarantine life, right? And I was telling my students this. I said, y'all, listen, when people kept asking me about the quarantine, I was like, this is a blessing in disguise. Like, God has had a chance to get all of us to be quiet, to have personal time, to cut the world off, to get our lives in order, to organize things, to take life into perspective, to have a whole new meaning about what life meant to us, to really come back with a whole plan about being intentional about our futures and what we wanted to do. Literally, we just came out of what I call a very sacred season. Despite all the chaos of the COVID-19 and all of that, I felt like what the enemy made for bad, God made for good by giving us sacred season of rest and restoration. 2.5 months of that. Like, when will we ever experience the world being shut off like that ever again? Probably never, ever in the history of life and of the world will we encounter anything like that. So we come out of this sacred season of just calmness, peace, restoration, and rest into this hailstorm of anger, rage, chaos, and destruction. I mean, we just came out of quarantine. I don't even know if all cities are opened up yet. And now the entire world has been shifted by this one event that took place, which, you know, I'm grateful that the world is paying attention, but it's very sad of why we are paying attention. The reality is that evil will come at all costs to disrupt peace. Evil will come at all costs to create chaos. The enemy is here to steal, kill, and destroy, right? And so you will have demonic forces in all aspects, always trying to attack the peace of God that surpasses all understanding. That is what we are faced with right now, is demonic forces at work, right? So here's the thing. When we deal with spiritual warfare, here's what I told the young ladies. I said, here's what we got to do. The first thing, guys, is you have to have spiritual discernment. You know, spiritual discernment comes from a divine relationship. You got to really seek the face of God and ask God to help reveal to you what you need to see in the spirit, because our human brains are very limited, and our human brains function off of emotion and how we feel. So if we are processing things as a personal attack against us, which a lot of this stuff is an attack, right? What happens is we just emotionally respond. A lot of times we don't have the discernment to see beyond what's happening. So we can get entangled into a lot of things. So right now, you know, here's the thing. I know a lot of people are angry, but tearing up your community ain't going to be the solution, right? I was telling them, I said, at the end of the day, evil is evil. You think evil has empathy? These folks not empathizing with us. What has to happen is personal empowerment, financial, economic empowerment, you know, being able to identify solutions that separate you from a system that is designed to control you. That's what's required in something like this, is how do you get yourself physically from up underneath the mantle of evil, where we are relying on a system to do for us, to, you know, and that's a whole nother conversation. I didn't want to get into that. But I said, this is point number 4. You got to learn how to war in the spirit, but be prepared and positioned in your flesh. And what that means is that we got to go into God in prayer. Now, I'm not saying you don't address these ills of what we see. But what most people don't understand, y'all, is it's not going to come really from just shouting and screaming at the cops. They don't care. They really don't care. I'm be honest. Evil does not care. Evil has no empathy. Evil is not interested in your point of view. What happens is you got to know how to play politics. You got to know how to play economics. You got to know how to do stuff in secret that repositions you, that doesn't make a public play, doesn't reveal your plays publicly for the ability to be attacked. That's a whole nother conversation. But one of the things that I was telling them right now is, you got to get your house in order, because it's about to be a different ball game on the other side of this. And if you're not operating from a place of wisdom and preparation, you're going to succumb exactly into the ploy and play of the enemy. Now, what's happening right now, y'all, is there's a lot of stuff that is being strategically set up. Okay. We see it. It's all on video, that the destruction of these communities are not coming from the protesters. They're coming from people who were positioned and paid. My husband saw a promotion this morning about you can get paid to go be a part of, I forgot the word that he used, to go be a part of the people that are actually creating the destruction. This is all organized. And we're playing right into the hands of the plan to be able to release. It's just a lot of stuff that is happening that we don't understand. Is not going to definitely position us where we want to be. It's going to be some stuff going down. So we have to understand that there's a lot of stuff at play behind the scenes that is trying to position us right into this situation right now, where the government has to come in and take control, right? You already have 14 cities where the National Guard is being released. We heard these rumors when we were in quarantine. And I want to believe that there was a plan that was at play there and it didn't quite play out as planned. So there was an alternative shift that they had to make happen. And that's what's happening. Like, that's my own personal opinion, that there's a lot of organization happening here with what's happening strategically. This is what I feel in my spirit. And when I see these people in all black with masks on, going in and breaking windows, you blonde hair, blue eyes, don't give a hoot about who George Floyd was, but you busting out windows. You see, you know, other people of other races writing Black Lives Matters on Starbucks, knowing that they have nothing to do with Black Lives Matter, and they going off on the Black Lives Matter people and then running off because they're planted, driving cars with no license plates and all this stuff. You understand that there's a much bigger play at hand here. And we have to pull back and begin to ask God for discernment of how we're supposed to be repositioned, right? So I wrote down, you war in the spirit, but you get positioned in your flesh. You got to get economically positioned. Guys, there are some things, listen, we're still on the brink of a major recession. It has been so wonderfully cushioned. And we were out yesterday looking at houses, and we were talking to different people, and we were talking about the fact of how wonderful the real estate market still is right now. How many people are still buying houses, and how many people are just still doing business as usual, oblivious to what's about to transition. I ain't knocking nobody. I want a house too, right? But I know in my spirit that there's some stuff about to happen. You might want to hold off on your dreams and your hopes and think differently economically about how you reposition yourself and how you restructure yourself, because there's a lot at play behind the scenes, and it's not going to be life and business as usual. I'm not knocking nobody's goals and dreams. If you want to buy a house for your agent, don't mean to knock your hustle. But listen, you got to pay attention. You got to ask God for wisdom and discernment to see beyond where we are. And you have to understand what a demonic and spiritual warfare looks like, spiritual attacks, and ask God, where are you to be positioned in this time and in this season, right? And so you war in the spirit, but you get positioned physically. So what does it mean to get positioned physically? Well, here's the thing, you guys, like, I don't know, I don't know where people stand, but what really makes a difference in a climate like this is economics. It's all good to really have a voice, but if you don't have economic empowerment to financially fund things differently, it really is hard to have an impact. And I think one of the things that we have failed to do is understand how to play the economic game. Most people were out here shopping like it was Christmas or Black Friday when the stimulus check came. And we don't realize, like, number one, that money is not your money. You got to pay it back next year. But secondly, this is not the lottery. Like, are you prepared come, I think it's June. I don't know if it's June 3rd or July 3rd or something like that. I saw on the news that evictions are about to start. And this 90-day pocket of time that we had, everything's about to kick in, stuff about to get cut off, people about to get evicted. It's financially, it's about to be a whole lot of an ish storm that's about to hit financially. So people who had this 90-day window to kind of Netflix and chill, if you didn't get positioned economically and you're just hoping and wishing that you can flow on into another stimulus, because I heard people say, well, I guess we ain't getting our second stimulus check. If you are sitting around waiting on stimulus, then that's a problem. If you're not repositioning yourself financially, so that's how you get positioned physically. One of the things. There's several other things I want to talk to about. I want to talk about publicly. I'll let you take that and ask God to reveal to you. But warn the spirit, but be positioned and prepared physically. All right. The fifth thing is be led by wisdom and not emotions. I know it's really hard. I talked about the fact that I had to personally separate myself and not take on other people's anger, not take on other people's emotions, not take on other people's opinions. I wrote a couple of Facebook posts and I deleted them because I realized I have to be very responsible in how I transfer my emotions over publicly. Because at the end of the day, we are already very sensitive and highly aware of the anger and the rage. And we have to be very responsible about how we fuel that. And so I just was asking God, all right, Lord, please show me how to operate from the spirit and not my flesh, how to operate from a place of wisdom and not emotion, how to operate from a place of discernment and not discouragement. Right. And God gave that to me. And so I had to have a conversation. I talked to my husband about it and I was like, listen, we can get real angry right now and go out there and try to fight physically. But at the end of the day, guns can be drawn, a battle can go down and everybody can just get shot up and die. Right. But the reality here is that God still is in control, even though it looks very much out of control. But God is still all knowing, all being. In the end, we get the victory. The word of God says, vengeance is mine, saith the Lord. God understands the spiritual warfare, the good and evil, what's at play behind all of this. And I have to operate from a place of faith to trust God, even when my eyes are witnessing something that I feel it can easily make me question if God is real. And here's what I also had to see. And this is why I'm very grateful that I do have some form of a manual to read from. But if you look at the history of this nation, it was around a lot of war. It was around a lot of racism. It was around a lot of these kind of issues. I was sitting down today and I was just thinking about, the whole Hitler era and what they did to the Jews and the concentration camps and all these things where you have these people in positions of power to oppress a nation of people and the devastation and the things that have happened. This has gone on for history. I mean, you go back to the day of Moses, and that's what Moses fought for with the Israelites and the Egyptians, right? Let my people go, right? The Israelites were slaves to the Egyptians, back breaking work. They built the pyramids, all those things. It has been since the history of time that there has been this human battle of good and evil, one thinking they're better than the other, one trying to oppress and suppress the other. So God gave me comfort in knowing that this isn't new. It's just that it's the same script with a different cast, right? The enemy has done this in so many different nations. I was telling my coaching students today, I said, I keep picturing, I think it was like last year with the Syrians, when they were pretty much trying to escape their own country and trying to cross the borders. And they were started living in these refugee camps and they had nowhere to go. They didn't have a home anymore because of the attacks and the war and everything that was going on. And all we did was watch from the news like, man, I'm glad that ain't me, right? We don't understand that this is happening all over the world. I saw something, we watched a documentary about China and communism and how some college students did a protest. I think it was in the 80s and the 90s, right? Because China had allowed them to start benefiting from capitalism, but they wanted to start having more ability of a democracy. So they were fighting for being able to have more control over their lives. They didn't want communism to run them. And so you had this group of college students who were, radicals. That's what happens, right? When you're a college student, you're young and you believe in something, you fight for it. And so these radical college students actually went and protested in the middle of the street, and they were standing in front of the tanks that came and were released by the Chinese army and military. And guess what? China came out with all these big old trucks, their military trucks, and guess what? They shot up all the protesters. It was one of the bloodiest days in history in China. So you see it's happening in other places all over the world. And you have to ask, all right, guys, so this is happening here. Like, how are we to respond to where we are? And what are we supposed to do in this season? And so one of the things that God revealed to me was that I am in full control. This is something that, even though it doesn't feel good, it's horrible. This is something that I know personally, God has said, do not allow yourself to fall apart emotionally. Seek my face to learn how to be prepared for where we are. Learn how to be a light in the midst of darkness. Be able to bring hope to the hopeless and be able to, stand in the midst of chaos and be able to walk in peace, but also be open and available to hear from what God has called us to do, to be able to instruct and lead others, right? Because the issue we have right now is that you have so many people operating from a place of emotion that there's no leadership. There's no leadership. And as leaders, you cannot be emotionally entangled into how you feel. That's why we have a president with no control. He's like a 2-year-old kid that's led by emotions. He throws tantrums. And when he don't get what he wants, it's going on Twitter, which is the stupidest thing you can ever do in leadership. And the reason why is because you're letting all your business out to the rest of the world who knows how to attack you now. So when you are operating from a place of leadership, you can't function like everybody else. You just can't. There's no way you can lead an army of people if you're emotional. It's just not going to happen. That's why when you see military leadership, they're very void of emotion because they always have to operate from a place of wisdom and know how to call the plays to save their men, to save their people. So if I allow myself to get emotional and I get entangled, I'm moving myself out of position of being able to lead properly and operate from a place of wisdom. And so a lot of us right now have no leadership. We don't have no leadership. There's no, I've been seeing so many people, especially within the Black community. I'm like, where are the leaders? Like, there's no leaders. Why? Because everybody's emotionally entangled into what's happening. You can never lead from emotion, ever, right? And that's why you'll find a lot of people who are very effective leaders. You'll find that they go in secret and they have to pray and they may cry and they may weep, but they'll never let anybody else see that emotion, because for all of those that are melting down, they have to show that we're going to be okay because I have a plan. And unfortunately, we're devoid of leadership and we're devoid of a plan. And so what I was telling them, I said, listen, I can't solve the issue for everybody. I can't say that I have the blueprint that's going to save the world or save a nation of people. But what I can say is that I can be discerning about what God has called us to do for those within our current positioning, right? For my family, for those that are closest to me, for those that I work with and I mentor. How do you reposition yourself effectively in the season so that you're operating from a place of wisdom and not a place of emotion? I'm not going to say it's not hard. I dealt with it for the past 48 hours. What I will say is that what has to happen is that you have to pull back and ask God for discernment and wisdom and not be moved by your emotions. And it is not a one-stop solution for that, right? I don't have a solution for you. I don't have the solution to say, okay, here's what God's going to tell you to do, because God will speak to each of us differently. I know what he's told me to do over here. And one of the things he told me to do is my head is down. And we have a movement with Impact Nation. And I'm focusing on Impact Nation and those that are before me on how to properly equip them so that they can be the ones that are actually understanding how to position and maneuver themselves in the midst of chaos. How do you actually create a level of focus so that you can be prepared, equipped, and in positions of leadership, in positions of impact when life is falling apart? And we have these conversations every day with Impact Nation. It's always personal development. It's like, listen, y'all, this is how you have to approach life. It's understanding what you need to do to be equipped and positioned to navigate in a world that is not always manageable. It's not always something that you understand or can control, but it is something that you can navigate through if you're equipped properly, right? If you're equipped properly. One of the things that God teaches us is learn how to be prepared in season and out of season. That means that whether things are the way we want them to go and not the way we want them to go, you're always equipped and prepared to handle whatever is before you because you stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And what I feel is happening is, unfortunately, we do deal with a very oppressed country. I look at America and I'm like, oh, baby, this American Babylon is going to deal with the sins and hatred and greed and all the manipulation and stuff that it is built on, because this country is built on that. It's built on lies. It's built on looting. It's built on murders. It's built on deception. That's how they started and formulated this country, killing the people who were originally here and taking claim. Like, that's just the history of this country, right? Another thing about this country is it was the people who were exiled from Europe. There were a bunch of criminals that they forced to leave Europe, right? So you had a bunch of criminals coming over here to actually launch this country with a criminal heart. And unfortunately, the sins of their fathers, it comes down generation after generation. But that's not just an American thing. That's historically, it's European. It happened in Europe. It even happened in different places in Africa. It just happens from the sins of ancestors, right? But at the end of the day, you are in this world. You don't have to be of it. You have an assignment on this earth. And no matter how evil, no matter how much deception, no matter how much wickedness is around us, God still has an assignment in us. And we have to understand what that role is. And I shot a video maybe a month or two ago about how you got to be a warrior in this world. Like, you can't be no punks. Right? You can't be running around here hoping that the world's going to be filled with harmony all the time. And then you don't know how to function when the world falls apart. It's going to happen. It's biblical. It's historical. It's life. You can't think that everybody's going to love you, because guess what? They're not. Right? We see a nation of people. And please, here's another thing I want to say. Stop blaming a whole audience of people for a group of people's sins. So what do I mean by that? All white people are not racist. Okay. It's unfortunate that we've dealt with a lot of white oppression as African Americans, but I will be the first to say that I have so many people in my circle that are like, Nick, what can I do? I just want to check on you. Like, I don't know what to say. I don't know. I hate what I see. I don't know what to do. And they're just, and it makes my heart weep, because I can feel their hearts and desires to want to be a contributing factor to what we see, because they probably never witnessed it like that before, right? But we have to be very careful to manage that as well with our engagement with others, and not isolate a whole population of people behind the sins of evil, of the few evil people, right? But we also have to be aware that there's demise. This is so much bigger than the physical of what we see, but it is the pure heart of evil. And we have to ask God, how do we address this spiritually, while positioning ourselves physically to handle what we are witnessing? I am not saying it is not wrong, y'all. It is hella wrong. I am enraged with what I see. And the old knickknack in me wanted to go out there and attack, right? There is parts of me that too, felt the rage, that in anger and disappointment and hurt that everybody else felt. But one of the things that I have to keep at the forefront is, at the end of the day, this is we're living we're spiritual beings having a human experience where God had an assignment for me before the foundations of the earth. He brought me to the earth for such a time as this. He's planted that assignment in me to fulfill out my destiny, to do some things that will create impact and transformation for a generation of people that require for me to think beyond my physical, emotional pain, and instead to operate from a place of spiritual wisdom, discernment, and maturity. And that's where my relationship with the Lord comes in. That's where my years of studying the word of God comes in. That's where my endless days of prayer comes in. That's where my desire to be a warrior and a soldier on a spiritual front in the spirit comes in, because it allows me to separate how I feel in my flesh, to get connected to the assignment that God has on my life, to begin to have discernment and think beyond what I see, and begin to understand how to be prepared and anchored into what I'm called to do. And by being committed to that, by being able to experience that, it's allowed me to stay focused on what God has assigned me to do in this season, and to also hear from him on how to equip, prepare, and position myself for what we are about to encounter. And so I want to encourage you guys, and I really want to, somebody asked me, she was like, that's one of my coaches, she was like, man, I really wish you would do a Bible study. And I was like, I probably will. I just don't know if I can make that commitment. But there are some things that I do want to start addressing to understand what the word of God says about these times that we are in. Because unfortunately, many of us are very comfortable. We have an assumption that our life is, that we can just live this plush life with no spiritual accountability or responsibility. That this is it, guys. This ain't it. Like, we're just passing through the earth. This is just a season. That's why the Bible says that there's a day to be born and there's a day to pass on. Like, all of us have a birth date and all of us have a day where we leave this earth. This is just a season that we are on this earth for a specific assignment. And we have to be mindful that that assignment is the priority, not us getting comfortable as if we'll be here forever. So the question mark for you is what is God saying to you? What is God calling you to do? What is God saying you need to be positioned for? How is God asking you to lead? How is God asking you to stretch yourself? How is God asking for you to develop and evolve spiritually? What are the things that you are called to do that are totally opposite of what you emotionally desire to do? Those are things that you have to sit back, pull back, and ask God what to do. Because I'm gonna tell y'all, playing into the hands of the enemy right now is not a smart move. Kind of haphazardly letting our emotions make these decisions is not a smart move. And hold on, my Instagram about to die. Babe, can you bring me a charger, please? But getting caught up into what we see, we can't do that. We have to get connected to what God is showing us in the spiritual realm. And we have to really go to war in prayer to ask God, how do I need to be positioned physically? I'm hoping y'all get what I'm saying. I cannot say everything I want to say publicly. It's just not publicly responsible. But I'm hoping y'all get what I'm saying, right? I'm hoping y'all get what I'm saying. I hope that it's a level of wisdom that is penetrating into your hearts that will, thank you, baby, that will allow you to see from a different set of eyes, as opposed to getting caught up in what you see on the news. The news is designed to spew fear, anger, rage, hatred, everything that is designed to be the demise of a nation of people. I saw something a few minutes ago. One of the young ladies was telling me about a guy who has funded $33 million. He's from Europe, to actually create disruption and havoc into America because he wants to destroy America. And so he's funding underground groups that were designed to create tension and disruption. And it's just like they're funding hatred. And I believe it. I really do believe it. I believe that the enemy will go to any length to create dissension. So I don't put any of it past anybody, but I'm not caught up in the man that's doing it. I'm aware of the spirit behind the man that is designed to kill, steal, and destroy. And so while many of you are going through this season like I am, trying to sort through your emotions, trying to find a level of wisdom in the midst of your rage, trying to find solutions in the midst of pain, trying to find sources of love when you really want to operate from a place of rage. I really want to encourage you to pull back and seek the face of God. I want you to ask, even if you aren't a believer, even if you struggle with religion, or even if you believe in something different, like, seek some level of spiritual discernment. It's higher. I can't say all that. I seek Jesus. That's all I can say. And I know that the word of God says that the natural man won't understand the things of God because they're spiritually discerned, which is why you have to accept God to know God, to hear from God. Because if you don't accept God, you're not going to hear from him. So I can't sugarcoat all of that. Y'all gonna have to sort through that. But I will say, for many of you who operate from a place of faith, who desire to get a stronger relationship with God, who you're saying in your heart, I need this all to make sense because I don't know where God is in the midst of this. I want to encourage you to really receive the Lord in your heart. A lot of people don't believe in that. Listen, I'm not here to work on y'all. Y'all not. This is not for me to convince who got issues, and that's not my space. My space is to talk about from a place of personal transformation, how God is teaching me and how I'm able to maintain my sanity, and how I'm able to stay focused in the midst of all of this, how I'm able to stay level-headed, how I'm able to see beyond the trickery, the conspiracy, the endless, hatred that is being spewed everywhere, to be in a place of wisdom, discernment, and preparation. And so I really want to encourage you guys, seek the face of the Lord, invite the Lord into your heart. Because this is just the beginning. We about to deal with some hell of a times, baby. This is something that we're only getting an appetizer for. It's a whole agenda connected to it. It's a lot of forces at work. And unless you are, and this is not to create fear, it is for you to understand that this is a game. This is not a game. This is an intentional act of a demonic force that is out to kill, steal, and destroy. And the only real way that you can get the blueprint to be able to see beyond it is for God to give you the downloads to know how to function and navigate during these times. Otherwise, you will end up in a place of trying to figure it out yourself. Your emotions will lead you down a whole spew of decisions that may work for you, may work against you. But I know for me to stay level-headed, I have to go to the Lord in prayer. I have to seek the face of God. I have to call on my relationship with Christ to help me make sense of where we are. Help me to really understand how the word plays out in real life. Help me to be able to not get just racially motivated, but also to get spiritually motivated, right? A lot of us are we feel very attacked because of our race, and we are being attacked because of our race. But I know that the bigger attack is spiritual attack, because of who we are and what God has called us to do. And the enemy wants to steal, kill, and destroy. He don't care if you're white, black, green, yellow, plum red. He don't care. Listen, the enemy is the enemy, and the enemy gonna show up any way he can. He is like a roaring lion seeking whom he may devour. Whoever is gonna be the kill for the day, he is on the attack. He will chase you through every nook and cranny to get you in the pawns of his mouth to crush you. That is the enemy's job, and he does it across all nationalities, across all genders, across all socioeconomic statuses. And that's the biggest battle that we are fighting right now, is spiritual warfare. And so I really want to encourage you guys, pull back for a minute, get into your prayer closet, and ask God to help you see through where we are and how to position yourself and how to prepare yourself, how to be able to lead, not from emotion, but from spiritual discernment. How to be the light in the midst of darkness, right? How to be bold and not operate from a place of fear. How to move by faith and not try to use your human limitations to navigate all of this, because we can't. And maybe this makes sense to y'all, maybe it doesn't, but these are the things that I shared with them today. I kind of had this discussion. I was like, I'm gonna bring it up. So I'll recap. The 5 ways to press through emotional suppression. The first is give yourself permission to mourn. You guys can look up the 5 stages of grief, and you're gonna go through that. Denial, anger, bargaining, depression, acceptance. It's just gonna happen. I went through it. I feel like I went through it all in 48 hours, right? The second thing is unplug to process and detach to detox, right? Unplug, turn stuff off, detach from everything and everybody, and just go somewhere. Get in your car, go for a drive, sit at the beach, sit in some sun, do something, but detach yourself, because when you come back, you'll see through a different set of eyes, like I did yesterday. Third is know that we are facing spiritual warfare. The weapons of our warfare is not carnal, it's a spiritual. It's happening carnally, it's happening to us in the flesh, but it's a spiritual warfare going on up in the realms, okay? Number 4 is you war in the spirit, but get positioned in the flesh. What that means is that you pray on your knees, you seek God for direction, he gives you the blueprint, you get up, you take action, and you get positioned, you get prepared, you get equipped. For example, talk about economics. That's going to be a big play in the next couple of months. If you're not positioning yourself to transition yourself economically, hey, I'm telling you, it's about to hit the fan. And that's why I'm focusing on Impact Nation, to show them how to do that. And number 5 is be led by wisdom and not your emotions. I can get real heated if I want to. But God, thank God for wisdom. Wisdom allows you to see things through a different set of eyes. And so those are the 5 things. I hope this helps y'all. I felt led to share this, and, listen, this is spiritual warfare, y'all. This is the time to be a warrior in the spirit. And, I'm so grateful. I'm grateful that, God saves us from ourselves. Because I can think back on who I used to be and how I would be responding, because I did get arrested in the Rodney King riots. I was out there. So I look at these kids and I'm like, I was 15 and I was arrested. Got cut. I still got a cut on my body to this day from running through glass doors, getting cut in buildings, and, was sitting in the jail cell and all that stuff. At 15, they didn't know I was 15 because I lied about my age too. So they thought I was 18 sitting in the prison from the Rodney King riots. And I went through the emotional side of what this feels like. And I thank God for maturity to be able to see beyond a lot of what is happening. Doesn't mean you don't fight for what you believe in, but it means it's how you fight and how you attack and how you go about it. Somebody said, how can people be light rather than a source of darkness in such a problem? That's a really good question. And the only real way I can say how you can be the light is that the light of God works through you, because I feel like I'm being a light. I could be real hood right now. I could be going ham. I could be getting emotionally entangled with people on comments. I could be fighting with people. I could be going back and forth about whatever. The truth is the light of Christ in me is what is allowing me to be the light, meaning I don't let my emotions take over and try to attack people personally, but I'm going in the spirit realm and praying about how God wants me to show up in this season. And so that's really seriously is like spiritual. Okay, I don't know how to explain it in the flesh, because my flesh the hood knickknack can really get real hood. And I thank God that part of me is contained. And so, I don't know if any of you guys have any more questions. I'm looking to see what questions. This is a real life purge going on. Yeah, somebody said Hunger Games and the purge. It's all planned though, y'all. It's a lot going on. It's a lot going on. My son was talking about that, and I was like, he would kill him. So good stuff. This is spiritual warfare is correct, and emotions are being transmuted. All is energy. It's all for distraction. Yeah. This guy said something. The guy who apparently is dumping $33 million. I saw a quote. I don't know if it's real. I haven't fact checked it, but he said he wanted to start in the black race because the black race is so easy to get emotionally rallied up. And so he was fueling things to really attack the black race because he knew that it would be an easy target for racial tension and all these different things. And I believe it's in multiple different races, right? But these are people's like intentional plan. Like they're literally sitting around like, who can we get, who can we piss off and like create this whole confusion around and destroy their lives. Like people are literally sitting around trying to figure out how to destroy people's lives. Like it's evil. They're vessels of evil designed, they're planted on this earth. And I want to encourage you guys to go read a book. I read this book when I was in college. It changed my life on how I see things. And that's why I'm able to see beyond the physical. It's a book called The Divine Revelation of Hell. That's the name of the book. By, her name is Baxter. Last name is Baxter. I think it's Catherine Baxter. But if you can, go get that book. It's The Divine Revelation of Hell. And it talks about how wicked works. The true demonic wicked schemes of the enemy. You can even read another book called Outwitting the Devil. It's another book that kind of shows you the intent behind evil. Most people are like, well, how do you know how evil? Listen, whether it's a fable or not, it gives you a different perspective like a movie does, that put these things in physical, real life before you scenarios for you to be able to understand that wicked has a face, but it's how it, I guess the word is, transmutes itself over into physical, and how it shows up. And I know many of you guys probably have seen evil face confront. I know I have. I've seen evil head on. And so Divine Revelation of Hell, Outwitting the Devil, those are books that you can put your head in right now and read, and you'll begin to see it in real life all around you. All right, y'all. So, Nicole, this is timely. I'm married. I'm Native American. My husband treats me like a squaw, degrades me. We've been married almost 6 years. I realize how hateful he is. So now I plan to leave him. Oof, sorry. My husband is a German white man. Wow. Yeah, evil is real. Very helpful. Book The Divine Revelation of Hell. Everybody should go buy it. That book changed my life and allowed me to know I can now see evil head on. Like you can see it. So that's it, y'all. That is my Nicoleism of the day about, thank you, Taylor. I see you're on here. Taylor was the one that asked me that question. She was like, okay, Nate, how are we supposed to keep a level head when you are pretty much pissed off? Like, what do you do right now? And that's how I felt the other day. I was like, I am pissed. I am angered. I was everything in the book, and I had to pull back and be like, okay, God, let me put on my wonderful, spiritual hat and show me how to show up nice. Now I want to be nice, wise. I ain't got to be nice. Show me how to show up wise. This ain't about being nice, but show me how to show up wise, God. Show me what that looks like. And just, I've just been praying. I had a lot of questions. I have a lot of prayer because I had a lot of solutions that weren't quite prayer-like. And so, so God is good. He has given me some time to download direction, and I hope it helped y'all. All right. So I'm wrapping this up. Get the books. And when God lead me to come back out here again, I'll come back out here again. All right. Have a great Sunday, y'all. All right. Bye.